Marcus Webb was beginning to suspect that agreeing to attend the Galactic Academy had been a mistake. Not because of the whole light years away from home thing. Not because his dorm room had gravity plating that fluctuated between Earth normal and significantly less helpful settings. Not even because the cafeteria's idea of human food was a gray protein cube that tasted like someone's approximation of chicken based solely on a written description. No, Marcus was having doubts because he was currently the only human in a lecture hall full of aliens who looked at him like he might eat them. Which was ridiculous. He'd had breakfast. Well, 2 protein cubes. He was fine. The lecture hall was designed with multiple seating configurations to accommodate the galaxy's diverse body types. There were perches for avian species, shallow pools for aquatics, and standard chairs for bipeds. Marcus had claimed a seat in the back row, mostly because every other student had scrambled to sit as far away from him as physically possible while still remaining in the same room. The student nearest to him was a good 4 seats away, a fluffy creature that looked like someone had crossbred a sheep with anxiety itself. It kept glancing at Marcus with wide, terrified eyes, then looking away quickly whenever he made eye contact. Its wool was literally quivering. At the front of the lecture hall, Professor Clendathu was arranging his notes. The professor was a mantoid, which meant he resembled a praying mantis that had been stretched to 7 feet tall and given a doctoral degree. His compound eyes scanned the room with what Marcus could only describe as academic disdain. Settle down, Professor Clendathu's voice chittered through the universal translator implant behind Marcus's ear. Welcome to Xenobiology 101. I am Professor Clendathu, and I will be your instructor for this course. He paused, his triangular head swiveling to fix Marcus with an unmistakable stare. I see we have a human joining us this semester. How very progressive of the admissions board. The way he said progressive made it clear he had other words in mind. Marcus gave a small wave. Several students flinched. Now then, the professor continued, turning back to his holographic display. This course will cover the biological diversity of sentient species across the known galaxy, with particular emphasis on evolutionary adaptations, ecological niches, and interspecies interactions. He clicked to the next slide, which showed a peaceful-looking planet covered in purple vegetation. We will begin with herbivorous species, as they comprise 73% of all spacefaring civilizations. This is, of course, logical. Herbivorous species tend to be naturally more cooperative, more peaceful, and more suited to the intellectual pursuits required for technological advancement. Marcus raised his hand. Professor Clendathu's antennae twitched with irritation. Yes, Mr. Webb? Quick question, are we going to cover omnivorous and carnivorous species too? Or are we just pretending they don't exist? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. We will be discussing predatory species, the professor said slowly, in the context of species to be avoided. They rarely achieve spaceflight, and when they do, they tend toward aggression and territorial behavior, unsuitable for galactic cooperation. Weird that a predatory species managed to get accepted to this academy then. Yes, Professor Clendathu agreed icily. Weird indeed. A student in the front row, something that resembled a deer if deer had 6 legs and bioluminescent spots, raised a hoof tentatively. Professor, is it safe to have a human in class with us? Yeah, another voice piped up from somewhere in the middle rows. I heard humans come from a Class 12 death world. My podmate said their planet is covered in poison plants and venomous creatures, and they just live there anyway. The sheep creature near Marcus made a sound like a squeaky toy being stepped on and scooted another seat away. Professor Clendathu held up a front leg for silence. While humans do indeed hail from a remarkably hostile planet, the Academy has deemed Mr. Webb sufficiently civilized to attend classes. He has, presumably, mastered his baser instincts. I house-trained myself in everything, Marcus said cheerfully. No one laughed. Now, if we're quite finished discussing the human, the professor said with profound weariness, I have a special demonstration planned for today's lesson. Teaching assistant Vrax, if you would. The door at the side of the lecture hall slid open, and in walked a Kavarian. Vrax resembled a large bird if birds were 6 feet tall, had 4 arms, and wore lab coats. His feathers were a mix of blue and silver, and he walked with the jerky, precise movements of avian species everywhere. He was also pushing a large containment unit on a hovercart. The containment unit was humming and rattling, and occasionally emitting sounds that made Marcus think of very angry cats mixed with the Jurassic Park soundtrack. Every non-human student in the room sat up straighter, their various survival instincts clearly firing on all cylinders. Marcus leaned back in his chair, curious despite himself. This was either going to be really interesting or really stupid. He was betting on stupid, but he'd been wrong before. Professor Clendathu's mandibles clicked together in what Marcus was learning to recognize as the mantoid equivalent of a smug smile. Class, today we are going to discuss something vital to your survival as you venture out into the wider galaxy: predator awareness and threat assessment. The containment unit rattled again, harder this time. Something inside it growled, a sound that started low and built to a crescendo that definitely had teeth attached to it. The sheep creature near Marcus made a sound Marcus hadn't known sheep creatures could make, and promptly dove under its desk. "Now, I know what you're all thinking," the professor continued, pacing in front of the containment unit with his forearms clasped behind his back in a practiced lecture pose. "You're thinking, Professor Clendathu, we're civilized beings at a prestigious academy. Why would we need to know about predators?" "Because they exist," Marcus offered. The professor's head snapped toward him. "Because, Mr. Webb, not all species have evolved beyond their violent natures. Some civilizations still contain predatory elements that can pose a danger to peaceful, educated beings such as yourselves." Oh, this was absolutely about him. This whole thing was clearly meant to be some kind of object lesson about scary predators, designed to make Marcus feel unwelcome or dangerous or whatever the professor was going for. Marcus had to admit, it was pretty petty. He respected the commitment. "Teaching assistant Brax has graciously volunteered to help me with today's demonstration," Clendathu continued. "Brax, would you care to explain what we have here?" Brax stepped forward, his taloned feet clicking on the floor. His feathers were slightly puffed, which Marcus suspected was the bird alien equivalent of nervous. "Certainly, Professor." Brax's voice came out as a melodious chirping that the translator rendered into galactic standard. "What we have here is a juvenile Raxian stalker, approximately 6 months old. The Raxian stalker is an apex predator from Raxus Prime, a Class 11 death world in the outer reaches." A student in the third row made a sound like air being let out of a balloon and slid slowly out of their chair onto the floor. "The Raxian stalker," Vrax continued, consulting his datapad with one of his forehands while the other 3 hovered nervously near the containment unit controls, "is a hypercarnivorous species with a hunting success rate of 97%. They possess retractable claws, multiple rows of serrated teeth, enhanced olfactory senses, and limited thermal vision. Adult specimens can reach sizes of up to 400 pounds, and are responsible for more colony evacuation orders than any other single species in the outer reaches." "And this one is a baby?" someone squeaked from under a desk. "A juvenile, yes," Brax confirmed. "Only about 40 pounds, relatively harmless." "Relatively?" The deer creature in the front row had gone completely pale, its bioluminescent spots flickering erratically. "Well," Vrax's feathers ruffled uncomfortably, "it does still have teeth." Professor Clendathu stepped forward, clearly enjoying himself. "The purpose of this demonstration is to show you all the proper physiological and psychological responses when confronted with a predatory species. Fear is natural. Fear is healthy. Fear keeps prey species alive." Marcus raised his hand again. "What now, Mr. Webb? Are you calling your students prey species? Because I feel like that's maybe not great for morale." "I am using scientifically accurate terminology," the professor snapped. "Perhaps such terms make you uncomfortable because they remind you of your own evolutionary history?" "Nah, I'm cool with it. Just seems like you're really leaning into the whole predator-prey thing. Very nature documentary." The professor's antennae vibrated with irritation. "Teaching assistant Vrax, release the specimen." "Release it?" several voices shouted in unison. Release it? Marcus echoed, suddenly more interested. In a closed room? With students? Is that, like, legal? The specimen is trained, Professor Clendathu said dismissively. It will not actually harm anyone. It is merely here to demonstrate proper threat recognition. Rack's feathers were now fully puffed, making him look approximately twice his normal size. Professor, are you absolutely certain this is wise? The human is in the room, and Raxian stalkers can be somewhat unpredictable around other predatory species. That is precisely the point of the exercise, Vrax. Our human students should understand what actual predators are like. It might instill some humility. Marcus was starting to think this professor had some issues to work through. Beginning release sequence, Vrax announced, his voice climbing an octave. All students, please remain calm and avoid sudden movements. Do not run. Do not make eye contact. Do not make high-pitched noises. Immediately, half the class made high-pitched noises. The containment unit's front panel began to slide open with a hydraulic hiss. The rattling inside stopped. The growling stopped. Everything went very, very quiet. Marcus leaned forward in his seat, genuinely curious now. He'd never heard of a Raxian stalker before, but based on the description, it sounded pretty cool. Kind of like a tiger mixed with a velociraptor. Maybe with some extra teeth for flavor. The containment unit door finished opening. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a head emerged from the darkness of the containment unit. Marcus had to admit, it was an impressive-looking creature. It did indeed look like someone had taken a big cat, added reptilian features, threw in some extra teeth, and painted it with bioluminescent stripes that pulsed in shades of orange and blue. Its eyes were large and forward-facing, the mark of a predator. Its claws clicked on the floor as it stepped fully out of the containment unit, each one curved and wicked-looking. The class held its collective breath. The Raxian stalker hatchling yawned, displaying several rows of very sharp teeth, and surveyed the room with what Marcus could only describe as professional interest. Then it spotted the students, and every single alien in the room prepared to die. The Raxian stalker hatchling stood at the front of the lecture hall, its head swiveling as it took in the room full of potential prey items with what appeared to be calculating intelligence. Marcus could practically see the gears turning in its predatory little brain. Its nostrils flared, scenting the air. Its pupils dilated and contracted as it focused on different students. Its tail, which was long and ridged with what looked like bone spikes, swished back and forth in a way that reminded Marcus of a cat about to pounce. The deer creature in the front row had frozen completely, every muscle locked in the universal prey response of, maybe if I don't move it won't see me. Spoiler alert, it saw him. The hatchling's head tilted, focusing on the deer creature with laser-like intensity. It took one step forward, then another. Its movements were fluid, silent, purposeful. The deer creature whimpered. Remember, class, Professor Clendathu said in a hushed tone that he probably thought was educational but came across as deeply sadistic. Observe your own physiological responses. Elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, the instinctive urge to flee. These are millions of years of evolution trying to keep you alive. I'm going to die, someone whispered from under a desk. We're all going to die, someone else agreed. The hatchling took another step toward the deer creature, then stopped. Its head swiveled again, nostrils working overtime. It had caught a scent. Its luminescent stripes pulsed brighter for a moment. Then its head turned, slowly, deliberately, until it was looking directly at the back of the lecture hall. Directly at Marcus. Oh no, Vrax breathed, his feathers flattening against his body in the avian expression of pure terror. Oh no, 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 Professor, it's detected the human. Interesting, Professor Clendathu observed, his academic curiosity apparently stronger than his survival instinct. Watch class. See how it recognizes another predator. Note the shift in body language. The Raxian stalker abandoned its interest in the deer creature entirely. It began padding up the center aisle between the seats, its eyes locked on Marcus with unwavering focus. Every student it passed scrambled away, pressing themselves against walls, climbing onto desks, doing anything to get out of its path. Marcus sat perfectly still, watching it approach. The thing was about the size of a large dog, maybe a small tiger cub. Its movements had that characteristic predator grace, weight distributed perfectly, ready to spring in any direction at a moment's notice. The bioluminescent stripes pulsed in a pattern that Marcus suspected meant something: excitement, maybe, or heightened alertness. "Mr. Webb," Professor Klendathu called out, his voice tight. "Do not make any sudden movements. Vrax, prepare the containment net." "Stay on it," Vrax chirped, fumbling with the device on his belt. The hatchling was 3 rows away now. 2 rows. 1 row. It stopped at the base of Marcus's row, head tilted, studying him with eyes that held a surprising amount of intelligence. This close, Marcus could see the details. The slight iridescence of its scales, the way its pupils contracted to vertical slits, the small ridge of bone that ran along its skull. It really was a beautiful animal. "Class," the professor whispered, "you are witnessing predator-on-predator assessment. 2 apex species evaluating each other for threat level. This is a rare opportunity to observe." The hatchling made a sound. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a hiss or a roar or any of the terrifying noises it had made in the containment unit. It was a chirp, a soft, questioning, almost musical chirp. Then it sat down, wrapped its spiked tail around its feet in a neat coil, and looked up at Marcus with an expression that Marcus recognized immediately from every dog, cat, and slightly dew-friendly raccoon he'd ever encountered. That was the look of an animal that wanted attention. "You've got to be kidding me," Marcus muttered. The hatchling chirped again, more insistently this time. Then it started making a sound that Marcus could only describe as purring, except this purr had a rattle to it, like someone had mixed a cat's purr with a small engine and possibly some gravel. "What?" Professor Klendathu said slowly. "Is it doing?" "I think," Marcus said, reaching out his hand carefully to let the hatchling sniff it, "it's being friendly." "Raxian stalkers don't do friendly," Vrax protested. "They do efficient murder and occasional ambush predation. They don't do friendly." The hatchling sniffed Marcus's hand thoroughly, its nostrils flaring. Then, in a move that made half the class gasp, it bumped its head against Marcus's palm. The purring intensified. "Oh, you're just a baby, aren't you?" Marcus said, finding the spot behind what he assumed were the creature's ear analogs, and scratching gently. The hatchling's eyes half closed in obvious pleasure. Its back legs started to twitch. "This is impossible," Professor Klendathu said, his voice climbing several octaves. "This is biologically impossible. Vrax, check the specimen's papers. Did we get the wrong creature? Is this some kind of domesticated variant?" Vrax was frantically scrolling through his datapad with all 4 hands. "Papers say wild-caught juvenile. Standard aggression levels, cleared for educational demonstration use only. This is definitely a legitimate Raxian stalker, Professor." "Thank you very much, it's over. Then why is it purring at the human?" Marcus looked up from where he was now scratching under the hatchling's chin, which had caused the creature to roll partially onto its side in a shameless display of pleasure-seeking behavior. "Because it's a baby predator," Marcus explained slowly, as if to a small child. "And I'm an adult predator. It's doing what juvenile pack predators do when they meet an adult they perceive as non-threatening. It's seeking social bonding." "Pack predators?" the sheep creature squeaked from under its desk. "Humans are pack predators?" "Oh yeah," Marcus said cheerfully, now giving the hatchling a proper 2-handed scratch while it made noises that sounded like a broken motorcycle. "Humans are persistence pack hunters. We evolved to chase prey for hours until it literally died of exhaustion, then share the kill with our pack." The lecture hall went so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. Or, in this case, heard a supposedly terrifying apex predator making happy rumbling noises while a human gave it belly rubs. Because, yes, the hatchling had now rolled completely onto its back, exposing its vulnerable stomach and making it very clear that Marcus should continue the attention immediately. "This is undignified," Professor Klendathu whispered. "This is adorable," Marcus corrected, obliging the hatchling with some excellent belly scratches. The hatchling's purring reached new volume. Professor Klendathu was having what could only be described as an academic crisis. This has never happened before, he kept repeating, his antennae twitching erratically. In 15 years of using Raxian stalkers for predator awareness demonstrations, this has never happened before. The hatchling, meanwhile, had discovered that if it rolled over and presented its other side, Marcus would scratch there too. It was exploiting this knowledge shamelessly. "Vrax," the professor said desperately, "explain this. You're the xenobiology specialist." Vrax's feathers were doing complicated things that suggested his brain was working overtime. "I cannot explain this, Professor. Raxian stalkers are solitary ambush predators. They don't bond. They don't purr. They certainly don't expose their vulnerable undersides to potential threats." "Maybe it's broken," suggested the dear creature, who had finally unfrozen enough to speak. "It's not broken," Marcus said, now playing with the hatchling like it was an oversized kitten. He dragged his hand across the floor, and the creature pounced on it with enthusiasm, its claws carefully retracted. "It's just a baby. Look at it. It's got that awkward adolescent lankiness, oversized paws, probably still losing its juvenile teeth." "How can you tell all that?" Vrax asked, fascinated despite his terror. "Because I have eyes. Also, I grew up with dogs and cats. Predator body language is pretty universal." The hatchling had grabbed Marcus's hand with its front paws and was gently gnawing on his fingers with its multiple rows of teeth, making happy growling sounds. "It's biting you," the sheep creature observed with horror. "He's play biting, see? No pressure. It's not even breaking skin. It's just mouthing, like puppies do." Marcus wiggled his fingers, and the hatchling attacked them with renewed enthusiasm. Pip, the rabbit-like student who had been silent until now, slowly raised a trembling paw. "I have a question." "Yes, Pip," Professor Clendathu said wearily. "Why would it want to bond with Marcus instead of, eating him?" The lecture hall went silent again. Even the hatchling paused its play attack to look up curiously. Marcus sat back in his chair, the hatchling immediately climbing into his lap and circling twice before settling down like a very deadly, very purring cat. "You want the scientific answer or the simple answer?" "Simple," several voices said at once. "Okay. Simple answer. It recognizes me as a bigger predator and is displaying submissive social behavior to avoid conflict while seeking pack acceptance." "And the scientific answer?" Vrax asked, his datapad at the ready. Marcus scratched behind the hatchling's ear spines and it leaned into his hand with obvious contentment. "The scientific answer is that I probably smell like an apex predator from a Class 12 death world, which I am, and this little guy's instincts are telling it that I'm higher on the food chain than it is, so instead of challenging me, it's trying to join me." "But you're human," Pip protested. "You don't look that dangerous. I mean, no offense, but you're kind of squishy and you don't even have claws." "None taken. You're absolutely right. Humans don't look dangerous. We're not the biggest, not the fastest, not the strongest. We don't have natural weapons or armor. We're just persistent." "Persistent?" the dear creature echoed. "Persistent." Marcus's smile was not particularly comforting. "See, humans are endurance hunters. We evolved to track prey for days, sometimes weeks. We can run longer than almost any other species on Earth. We can survive in environments that would kill most creatures. We can eat an incredible variety of foods, including things that are poisonous to other species. And we're really, really good at pattern recognition and tool use." The hatchling yawned, displaying all its teeth, and snuggled closer to Marcus. "Humans," Marcus continued conversationally, "walked out of Africa with nothing but pointed sticks and eventually colonized every continent on the planet. We hunted mammoths to extinction. We domesticated wolves, turning apex predators into pets. We looked at the ocean, which is full of things that want to eat us, and decided to sail across it anyway. We're not the scariest thing on Earth. We're the thing that made all the other scary things afraid." Professor Clendathu had gone very still. "So when this little predator," Marcus gave the hatchling a gentle pat and it purred louder, "looks at me, it doesn't see prey. It sees something its instincts are screaming at it to either run from or make friends with. And since I'm being nice to it, it chose option 2. Vrax had stopped taking notes. His datapad hung limply in one hand. How many species, he asked quietly, has humanity hunted to extinction? Depends on who you ask and how you count. Dozens probably, maybe hundreds if you count the indirect stuff. And how many, Professor Clendathu's voice was strangled, has humanity domesticated? Marcus shrugged. Dogs, cats, horses, cattle, pigs, chickens, sheep, goats, rabbits, ferrets, various rodents, some birds, bees, silkworms. We've domesticated ourselves honestly. We turned wolves into chihuahuas. We made cats into house pets. We convinced prey animals to live with predators because we promised to protect them from other predators. The hatchling had fallen asleep in Marcus's lap, still purring. Mr. Webb, Professor Clendathu said very carefully, what else has humanity domesticated? Marcus's grin was absolutely feral. Professor, do you really want to know? The lecture hall had achieved a quality of silence usually reserved for funerals or moments before disasters. Professor Clendathu's compound eyes were fixed on Marcus with an intensity that suggested he was reconsidering every life choice that had led to this moment. Yes, Mr. Webb, the professor said slowly, I believe the class would benefit from understanding the full scope of human domestication practices. Marcus pulled out his datapad, carefully adjusting his position so as not to disturb the sleeping apex predator in his lap. The hatchling grumbled in its sleep and repositioned itself, draping one clawed paw across Marcus's leg possessively. Okay, so where do I start? Marcus scrolled through his photo library. We've got dogs, obviously, descendants of gray wolves. We turned one of Earth's most successful pack predators into everything from tiny purse-sized animals to creatures that outweigh most humans. He turned the datapad around, showing a picture of a small, fluffy dog next to a massive Great Dane. Those are the same species? Pip squeaked. Technically, yes. We selectively bred them for thousands of years, for fun mostly. Rax made a choking sound. Then there's cats, Marcus continued, swiping to the next image. We didn't even really domesticate them. They just showed up, started killing rodents around our grain stores, and we were like, sure, live in our houses. We'll feed you and worship you as gods. The picture showed an orange tabby cat lounging in a sunbeam, looking supremely unconcerned with anything. That's a predator? The sheep creature asked doubtfully. That's a hyper-efficient murder machine that kills for sport even when it's not hungry. Cats are responsible for the extinction of multiple bird species. We keep them as pets and put little bells on them so they jingle when they walk. Professor Clendathu's antennae had stopped twitching entirely. But wait, there's more, Marcus said, with the enthusiasm of someone who knew he was destroying worldviews and was enjoying it immensely. We've got horses, which we rode into battle. Falcons, which we trained to hunt for us. Ferrets, which are basically adorable fuzzy snakes with legs that we use to hunt rabbits. Would you need to hunt rabbits? Pip asked nervously. Food, mostly, also sport. Humans are really into sport hunting. Pip looked faint. Marcus swiped through more images. Honeybees, which can kill us with their stings, but we steal their food anyway. Snakes, some of which are venomous, that people keep in glass boxes in their living rooms. Spiders, including tarantulas that some humans consider pets. Spiders? Several voices gasped. Oh yeah, some people are really into spiders. There's entire communities dedicated to it. Marcus found a picture of a large tarantula on someone's hand. This guy is named Mr. Fuzzy Legs, and he lives in someone's bedroom. The deer creature slid out of its chair again. We've also domesticated various reptiles, Marcus continued relentlessly. Lizards, iguanas, even crocodilians in some cases. Some people keep pythons that could literally constrict and eat them, but they feed them frozen rats and give them cute names. This is madness, Professor Clendathu whispered. Oh, we're not done. See, recently humans have started keeping even weirder stuff. Scorpions, hedgehogs, sugar gliders. There's a growing movement to keep foxes as pets, despite the fact that they're wild animals. Why? Vrak's voice cracked. Why would you do any of this? Marcus looked up from his datapad, genuinely confused by the question. Because they're cool? Because we can? Because humans have this weird instinct to look at dangerous things and think, Maybe we can be friends with that? The hatchling stirred in his lap, making a sleepy chirping sound. Marcus absently scratched its head, and it settled back down. The really wild part, Marcus said thoughtfully, is that this isn't even unusual behavior for humans. Every human culture on Earth has domesticated animals. Some of them worked with us, some we ate, some we just kept around because we liked them. We've been doing it for so long that both we and the animals evolved together. Dogs understand human pointing gestures better than our closest primate relatives do. Cats have developed specific meows just to manipulate humans. Manipulate, the sheep creature whispered. Oh yeah, the sounds cats make to humans aren't the same sounds they make to each other. They learned what noises make humans give them food and attention, and they use those noises deliberately. Professor Clendethu sat down heavily in his chair at the front of the lecture hall. His legs seemed to have stopped supporting him. "Mr. Webb," he said faintly, "are you telling me that Earth predators have learned to psychologically manipulate humans, and humans just accept this?" "Accept it? We think it's cute. We post videos of it on the internet and give each other awards for the best ones." Internet, global communication network, mostly used for sharing pictures of our domesticated predators doing adorable things. The professor put his head in his upper pair of hands. "There's more, but I feel like you're processing," Marcus said generously. "More?" Brax croaked. "What could possibly be more?" Marcus's grin was absolutely evil. "Well, some humans keep sharks in giant tanks in their houses." Pip fainted. The lecture hall had descended into what could only be described as controlled chaos. Half the students were having quiet existential crises. The other half were staring at Marcus like he'd just revealed he had a black hole in his pocket and occasionally used it to open jars. Professor Clendathu had his head on his desk. His antennae drooped in defeat. "Sharks," he mumbled into the synthetic wood surface. "Why would anyone keep sharks?" "Because they're awesome," Marcus offered. "I mean, they're living fossils, perfectly evolved killing machines that have remained basically unchanged for millions of years. What's not to love?" "The part where they eat you," Pip said weakly from the floor, "where they were being fanned by the deer creature with a notebook. Most sharks don't eat people. That's a common misconception. They just bite you to see what you are, and then usually swim away disappointed." "Usually?" Vrax's voice had climbed into registers that probably only dogs could hear back on Earth. "I mean, there are exceptions. Bull sharks are kind of aggressive, but most of them are fine if you don't bother them." The hatchling in Marcus's lap woke up fully, stretched with a yawn that displayed every single one of its teeth, and looked around the lecture hall with obvious contentment. It had apparently decided that Marcus was its new favorite person, and the sleeping situation was satisfactory. Marcus gave it a final scratch behind its ear spines. "So, Professor, can I keep it?" "Absolutely not," Professor Clendathu said automatically, lifting his head. Then he paused. "Keep it where?" "My dorm room. I promise I'll take care of it. Feed it, play with it, make sure it gets enough exercise. I'm good with animals." "Your dorm room," the professor repeated slowly. "Where you live. With a roommate." "Yeah, Terrence won't mind. He's pretty chill about pets." "How many pets does your roommate currently have?" Marcus thought about it. 3, maybe 4, depending on whether you count the colony as one pet or multiple. Every alien in the room leaned forward slightly. "What?" Verax asked with the careful tone of someone approaching a bomb. "Kind of pets does your roommate have?" "Well, there's Captain Fluffington, who's a cat. Earth cat, orange tabby, very friendly, loves knocking things off tables." Nods around the room. They'd seen the cat picture. Terrifying, but at least comprehensible. "Then there's Sergeant Scales, who's a ball python, about 4 feet long, eats frozen mice, mostly just lounges in his heated tank looking majestic." Brax was taking notes again, his hand shaking slightly. "And then there's the tarantula situation." "Situation?" Professor Clendathu's voice cracked. "Yeah, Terrence has a Chilean rose-haired tarantula named Princess Sparkles. She's actually pretty docile, hasn't bitten anyone in weeks." "Weeks?" several voices chorused. "Well, Terrence got a little careless during feeding time, but it was barely a bite, more of a warning nip, really. His hand only swelled up a little. The sheep creature made a sound like a deflating balloon. Oh, and there might be a colony of harvester ants in a terrarium, but Terrence says they don't count as pets because they're more of an educational observation project. Harvester ants, the professor said flatly. They're fascinating, actually. Very organized social structure. Plus, they can't escape the terrarium, probably. Probably? I'm like 70% sure the lid is secure. Professor Clendathu stood up slowly, his movements mechanical. He walked to the front of his desk and stared at the Raxian stalker hatchling, which was now grooming itself in Marcus's lap like an oversized, deadly cat. "Mr. Webb," he said quietly, "I'm beginning to understand that my initial assessment of your qualifications for this course may have been inaccurate." "Yeah? Yes. You may in fact be overqualified." He paused. "We will discuss the matter of the Raxian stalker after class, with the dean, and possibly security, and perhaps a xenopsychologist. So that's a maybe on keeping it?" The professor's antennae twitched in what might have been the mantoid equivalent of a laugh or a sob. "We'll see." Marcus beamed and gave the hatchling a triumphant scratch. It purred and bumped its head against his hand affectionately. Brax raised one of his 4 hands tentatively. "Professor, should we perhaps revise the curriculum? Given the presence of a human student, our previous assumptions about predator species may need updating." "Oh, you think?" Professor Clendathu's sarcasm could have stripped paint. "Yes, Vrax, I believe we will be making some significant revisions to this course." The hatchling yawned again, settled back into Marcus's lap, and closed its eyes contentedly. Marcus looked around at the room full of traumatized herbivores and one very defeated professor. "So, same time next week for Lecture 2? "Next week," Professor Clendathu said with the air of someone resigned to their fate, "we will be discussing omnivorous species and their role in galactic civilization. I expect it will be very educational for everyone involved." "Cool. Should I bring Captain Fluffington? He's great with demonstrations." "Please don't." "What about Princess Sparkles?" "Absolutely not. Sergeant Scales is really low maintenance." "Mr. Webb, please do not bring any Earth creatures to my class." Marcus grinned. "You know, Professor, I think this is going to be a great semester." The hatchling purred in agreement. Somewhere in the back of the lecture hall, the sheep creature whimpered softly. "Welcome to Xenobiology 101, where humans proved once again that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't claws or teeth or venom. It was the absolute certainty that anything could be a friend if you just scratched it in the right spot."